Kevin Bolling is the Executive Director of the Secular Student Alliance, and he has served in that position since 2017. He brings with him 20 years of nonprofit leadership experience, and his career has included over 10 years of student association management and on-campus program development from LA to Boston. For 10 years, he served as the executive director of the California Thoroughbred Horsemen's Foundation, which I'm sure ties right back into with the Secular Student Alliance. But the Horsemen's Foundation is a charitable trust serving the healthcare needs of the industry's largely immigrant workforce. Most recently, he served as the director of philanthropy at the Gay Men's Chorus in Los Angeles, which is a major LGBTQ arts advocacy organization, whose youth outreach work has moved thousands of hearts and minds across the U.S. towards embracing the LGBTQ equality. Kevin has graciously agreed to talk to us tonight and to let us know what we can do about furthering SSA work throughout the Chicagoland area and elsewhere. So, Kevin.
It's great to be with you guys here tonight. So what I'm going to do is I have a presentation that talks just a little bit about sort of the incoming generation into college, sort of their mindset, and then a little bit about sort of new people coming in and how to attract new people and sort of things you can do, and of course answer any questions that you have. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and start sharing my screen here. Why they haven't figured out how to and that should, there we go. So again, welcome. It's a pleasure being here. As Howard already introduced me, so I won't do that myself. Again, just this is a little bit about the next generation, the incoming generation, really for us into the secular movement. Talking about the changing world on college campuses, how to engage that next generation. And I will probably slip back and forth between talking about students and young people or younger people. And so that's really just, look, and I just think of it as new people. Like if you're looking to get new people in, so some of this information will help. Things that you can do, and of course, answering any questions that you have. So we are, as Howard mentions, we're the Secular Student Alliance, the organization that I work with, and we're the only national organization that's dedicated to working with atheist, humanist, and non-theist students. And so we have chapters in primarily in college universities, but we're also in high schools and even more increasing in middle schools. So we often talk, we're working with the future leaders of the secular movement, but we're also working with future leaders who are going to have secular values and putting those in place into their community. So the organization was started in 2000, and COVID obviously has been a little different for everybody. But before COVID, we had about 300 chapters all across the United States. And so we are in the process of sort of rebuilding and building those back and sort of re-engaging on campuses sort of post-COVID, and again, along with everyone else. So as part of the Secular Student Alliance, we are part of the larger secular movement. We have a great relationship with Camp Quest. We can very much consider Camp Quest our sister organization. So in working in summer camps and day camps across the country, a lot of the students who are in Camp Quest often come and join SSA chapters. And actually our student leaders will actually go and volunteer as camp leaders at Camp Quest. So it's a great mutual relationship. And we really looked that we are a feeder into the larger secular movement. So we really want our alumni are leaving us, and finish with their time within higher education and graduating from college, university, that they're going into other organizations. And so we want to be that bridge. We want there to be that connection, not only at the national level, but also at the local level. So if they're at a particular school and they're going to stay in that community, we want them to get involved with the local groups in their community as well. So the Secular Student Alliance, we obviously working with non-religious students, but just in the United States, it wasn't that long ago that 1 in 4 in the United States identified as non-religious. Of that, about 1 in 3 students used to identify as non-religious, but at Ryan Bird's, some recent data from 2020 showed that almost 1 out of 2 students identify as non-religious. So the younger generation coming up, it's clear that we're definitely moving towards that trend of increased non-religion in a very broad term, the nones. And this really could be the first generation to be that tipping point. So to go from majority religious to majority non-religious. I always like to throw this picture up. And I said we have, Bailey is a little bit older now. So she's actually in high school now, but she was starting one of our first chapters in middle school in Utah. So it doesn't help that she's adorable as can be, but she's also, has I think written her 3rd book, has been published already, and her sister has also published a book. So very great family. We're here talking about the next generation and what you can expect. And so really we're sort of looking, this is a bit of information about the class of 2024. So they'll actually have just be finishing their first year in school. So this Beloit College does a sort of assessment every year of looking at their mindset. So what are some of the major things that have impacted and affected them? What we can expect is sort of interacting with them. So for these students, these young people, so they grew up with stories about 9/11. So like Pearl Harbor for their grandparents and Kennedy assassination was sort of historical events. For them, so was 9/11. So the US has always been at war since they've been alive. There's always been an American Taliban. They've always had the Patriot Act, so the sort of increased state surveillance against terrorism. Donald Trump has always been a politician, first as a Democrat, then an independent, and then, of course, now is a Republican, I guess is what you call him. Bill has always been Hillary's aging husband. Every 4 years, we have the conversation of, why do we have the electoral college and electoral system? Enron has never existed since they've been born. Chernobyl has never produced any electricity. Cloning has always been just a normal laboratory procedure. Vaccines have always been wrongly linked to autism. The abortion pill has always existed. See something, say something has always been a national motto. Sandy Hook was their Columbine, and of course has led to a lot of the violence and shootings that we've seen in schools, and where we now have bullet-resistant backpacks. So they're the first generation where this is really ingrained in them, and that they know that they can be killed at school at any time. At the same time, Starbucks has always been in the Forbidden City in China. So many of us probably remember Encyclopedia Britannica and having that entire set at home, where theirs is at their fingertips, free for everybody. Survivor has always existed. There's always been snowboarding in the Olympics. Troy Aikman has always been calling the plays from the press booth, and flyovers and God Bless America have always been at sporting events to promote patriotism. Ketchup's always been green. Pink slime has always been an additive. They will argue with their parents about what the first episode of Star Wars is. So they probably have never heard that tone to dial in, or you have mail. They have lived in a very floppy-less world. The Mars Odyssey has always been looking for water on Mars. They've always had the nanny cam to check in on the babysitter. They've always been able to use their fingerprint as their ID. eHarmony has always been using its algorithms to connect people. The big four, social media, for them has really replaced the big three automakers as for their grandparents. Texting is what it's all about. They really don't care or pay attention much to email at all. And Snapchat has always been sort of the preferred social media platform. Phones have always been used as their primary use to take pictures. And they've always had smartwatches. So of this population, they're about as non-judgmental about sexual orientation as their parents were about pot. So, and only about 2/3 of this generation identify as exclusively heterosexual. So a big sea change as just far as how they see sexual orientation and gender identity. And nearly 1/2 of this generation is comprised of people of color. So they've had 2 African-American secretaries of state, the first Black president, Disney's first Black princess, and the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement. So, and this upcoming school year, their generation will constitute about 1/4 of the US population. So, and of course, they have gone through and experienced the coronavirus like the rest of us. And I think it'll be a little bit of time to where we see how this pandemic affects them in the future in the long run. So just a little, overcapping of the generations. So the baby boomers, Generation X, Generation Y, and then Gen Z is really the generation that we're talking about as far as who is up and coming in college and the future sort of members within the secular movement. Why are the millennials important? And so the Gen X, Y, and Z really comprise the millennials. So they're going to, right now there are about 80 million people in the US, 2.5 billion people worldwide. And by 2020, they were 50% of the workforce. And by 2030, they're going to be 70% of the workforce. I think there's often conversations that, that they really don't give a care. They're sort of, a little aloof, but they really want their work to make a difference. And they really want to contribute about what they're doing in society. And of course, they grew up with technology, technoholics. Usually have about 5 different screens. It's integrated into their lives. They realize that social media is should be, they've learned a little bit from us. It's temporary and should be more private. So a little bit more secure and reserved about putting information out on public. And it's all about real-time connection. So they can video chat with anyone, anywhere in the world. And they're using this as a really creative impact. So, and it's also obviously very collaborative. So we get into talking about the students that we're working with, and obviously there's the larger category, the nuns. For us, the Secular Student Alliance, we are really primarily working with the students who identify as agnostic, atheist, humanist, or secular. We do have religious students who are part of our organization and go to meetings and participate. But really it's looking at sort of that smaller population who identify sort of the atheist, agnostic, humanist that we work with. And we asked our students, how do you identify? And you can see atheist is still the primary sort of category which our students identify. But if you, looking quickly at the math, you will quickly realize that this is way beyond 100%, because it's not a single category that our students identify with, but it's really 3 or 4 that is the largest group in which they are picking identifiers. So they may identify as an atheist because they don't believe in God. They may identify partly as humanist because of their values. They may like the separation of church and state, so they're identifying as secular, and they obviously feel like they're non-religious. So we often try to share with American atheists and American humanists, the terminology you're using can invite or disinvite people. And more, like with a lot of different labels, they don't identify with one, so having to be one, but they're identifying with multiple labels. And again, the most popular for our students in the survey was picking 3 or 4 of these as how they identify. So we also try to find out, like, how did you grow up? Are we making more non-religious people, or are we just, getting everyone from non-religious households? And only about 13% of our students who work with us came from secular or non-religious households. So the vast majority of people are coming from religious households. And during the pandemic, this was a huge issue for many of our students. So Christian students went home from their school and went back to their Christian families and their Christian communities, where the vast majority of our students, they went back to, our non-religious students went back to their religious families. The other you see down at the bottom, it was Mormon. So, which really should be up in the low Christian category, but they consider it oftentimes a little different. So yeah, the vast majority of our students come from religious families. So in talking a little bit about politics, so I would guess these numbers have probably gone up a little bit since the survey was taken. It's been a few years, but about 56% of atheists identify as liberal. But when we really look at what those values are, we see there's a big difference. So almost 75% would support the government, helping aid the poor. So our government should be doing things to help all of us. 87% think that abortion should be legal. 94% accept homosexuality. Almost 80% thinks we should be protecting the environment, have strict laws to do that. And this is an interesting one to me, but 83% think that the right or wrong depends on the situation. So this isn't about being told what to think, or there's this overriding rule about what is right and wrong, but really depends on the situation. And I think a lot of what we talk about here, just in not only this politics, but how we look at religion, is also very different from how we see religion and what religion is actually doing. About 20 years ago, 1 in 10 of the Democratic voters were religiously unaffiliated. Right now, that's about 1 in 3. So that's changed a lot. For the Republican, friends in the House, that's about 15% today. We asked our students what is their political identity. And you can see, while we do have some people who identify as slightly conservative or moderately conservative, the vast majority of our students identify as liberal or progressive. And again, sort of matching those values. So obviously we work with students on college campuses primarily, as well as high schools and middle schools, but the majority of our students are in college campuses. So just want to touch a little bit on that with you. So the college campuses are homes to a lot of student organizations, and a lot of faith-based ministries have their own campus organizations. So on some campuses, there may be as many as 120 religious student organizations, but only 1 secular student alliance. And our chapters can also use different names. The majority of them do use Secular Student Alliance. It's easy, but they're also, of course, free to choose their own names. It wasn't that long ago that the campus ministries realizes that they were losing a lot of students in their first year of college. And so their own studies showed that they were losing about 70% of Christian students ended up leaving their faith during that first year. And they didn't fully define what leaving the faith meant. So my assumption is, they weren't coming to services anymore. They weren't going to the meetings and those sorts of things. And so they dumped tons and tons of money into starting Campus Link. And that's really identified students in high school, knew where they were going into college, and before they even went, showed them all of the resources of their particular religion and what they could do. And then when they were on campus, the first week on campus, and this is not the first week of classes, but the first week they arrived on campus, had people go meet them and bring them to the social or the church or whatever to make sure that they stayed in. So the religious campus ministries are extremely well organized, extremely well funded, and of course, actively proselytizing. So for our students, so again, a growing number of our students, this is from our conference a few years ago. We were our last one in person. Our students, so it's just some interesting demographics about our students. About 50% of our students are male and about 50% are female. And that's in leadership as well. So we know that about 40% of our students identify as people of color or from mixed race. Their self-identification as they defined it. About 20% of our students identify as gay or lesbian or bisexual, and another 5% as transgender or gender nonconforming. And so I often think when I'm talking with sort of local groups that are out there, or even some of the national groups, and have, with AHA as well, is that how, are those demographics matching what you see in your local group? And I think oftentimes not. And so this is a great sort of reality, I think, for our local groups, is this is the population that is moving up into these spaces. And what are you doing to make sure that you have programs and services ready for them, that they feel comfortable in joining your group, and that you're ready for them. So some of the things that our students are excited about and active in, of course, the separation of church and state is extremely important to our students, and probably one of the main, obviously one of the main unifiers of the things that they're sort of active and passionate about. Obviously, the environment is very important to them, and the youth that are in the movement and sort of leading a lot of the stuff that's happening in environmental action is very prevalent. Racial justice is important, as well as trans and LGBT rights. They want their campuses to be safe places, as well as being advocates for reproductive health. Sorry about that. They're very involved in voter registration and voter rights. We actually have a webinar coming up next week that's talking all about voter rights and voter suppression and what you can do. It's obviously for our students, but everyone's invited to come. And we also, in 2020, led the secular movements and the secular voter rights campaign. We also know that over 80% of our students are registered to vote. They're also big into community service. So this is our secular spring break. We were in Puerto Rico rebuilding homes after Hurricane Maria. So lots of rooftop work. The year after that, we were actually in the Bahamas on Great Abaco Island, which was completely devastated. And we were supposed to be in Louisiana this year after Hurricane Irma came ashore. But unfortunately, the program that we work with had to cancel that due to COVID. But we're excited to be back into that this upcoming, not this summer, but next summer or next spring. So I often ask you, are you ready? Everything that you see that's their demographics and their population and their background and what they're interested, are you ready? What we want to make sure is that they have a connection. So as they're leaving SSA, as I mentioned before, that they're going into those local groups, that they're going into your group, that they're going into the national groups and getting involved. So we always, I always ask us, why do you want young people involved? So, and that's a question for your group to answer. So a little bit about millennials. They're the generation that grew up teaching themselves stuff. So, and a lot of that's with technology. And they're not stuck in those rigid environments, that we've done this like this for years. And so this is the way that we have to do it. And so oftentimes when we get new or younger people in some of the established groups, there can be a little friction because they're going to be asking questions like, why do you do it that way? And why aren't we doing this? And so, I encourage you not to get frustrated by that. When they, just wonder from how things can be, done differently. This is a great time to sort of engage them. And if they're asking, why aren't we doing this sort of event? Hey, would you like to help us plan that? It's a great way to get them involved and encourage their involvement. Or, what about a more robust thing on social media? Hey, would you help us with that? Would you like to help do that? So it's, I encourage you to include that as a way to get people involved and sort of an opening of a door rather than getting frustrated, which is easy to do. And I totally get that as well. Because we want them to join. We want them to continue to be involved in the secular movement, because if they're not, they're going to go and get involved with something else. And we're doing a lot of leadership development, and we want to keep that within the secular movement. So what can you do? Welcoming inclusive talk is sort of really important for any new people coming in, and I've got some examples about that a little bit later. intergenerational spaces and separate spaces. So we want things where, and we've often hear from local groups like, well, if we get all these new people, we're not going to be serving our current members. And there can be a reality to that. So what we want is there can be separate spaces where the people who've been involved in the group or the older people who've been involved in the group can have their events, and the newer people can have events as well. So many of our students like to do active projects, so community service sorts of things. So but there's also times where it's great to have intergenerational, where we've got everyone coming together, and that means that we have to account for other things that younger people may be specific with. And again, active projects, so community service, things beyond discussions. Our students really want to be active in what they're doing. So our students are doing river cleanups and adoptive dog programs on campus, and working with animal shelters, and going out and helping people who are experiencing homelessness and hunger. So they're super active in what they're doing and making experiences and what they want to do in the world. So does that mean that everyone may be able to participate in all of those things? No. So some people may have some limitations, and that's okay. There can be a mix of different programs for different audiences and serving different groups of population within sort of a larger local group. And we often think of think about what makes your sort of group special and unique. And that's a great sort of marketing benefit. Some of the churches have looked at why younger people are leaving religion. And so they get into talking of things about they don't walk the walk as their talk. So talking about the hypocritical nature of what's taking place. They're not inclusive. They're not talking about rational and scientific sorts of things. And these are things that I think our local groups and our national groups should be really good at promoting and inviting into new and younger people. And I would say there's nothing wrong with liking how your group is right now. So, and I make the assumption in sort of being invited here that you want to attract new and people to your group. But I qualify that if you don't want to change anything, then you don't want new people. And that's not a judgment statement on my part. It's just there's a reality to that. If you're doing if you want to continue to do the exact same things you're doing and serving your group, that's fine. But it does require us to take new leaps and new challenges and try new things, all of which may not work. We may have to try some different things if we want to invite new people in and make our groups inviting to new people. So what can you do? So getting online is super important, obviously. Website and social media. And I know you guys are on Meetup, but really the way younger people are finding about things is online and through social media. I do a couple little points about that, but that could be obviously an entire conversation. Advanced planning and promotion is really important. And again, talking about intergenerational and sort of separate spaces. Younger people oftentimes have kids or don't have cars, and so they need some additional information or for you to think about some additional stuff when you're sort of planning events and for things for them to get involved with. So oftentimes they may need some information about transportation, about parking, and about childcare. And if you're doing a sort of a intergenerational event and people are going to have kids, then making sure that they have something to do with their kids, the kids can be additionally occupied while they're participating in whatever you're doing, is going to be really important to them. And I think a lot of our local groups miss out on this entire population of people with some younger kids because we're not talking about childcare and what we need to be doing about that. And then just sort of that they have this energetic leadership. So encouraging their participation and listening to new ideas. You don't have to do this all, but listening to them is sort of important. And and again, this is great ways to get them involved. And if they want to do a community service project, oh my gosh, great. so-and-so is doing our programs. Let me introduce you to them. Let's come up with a community service project that works for people. And maybe you can help some recruit some other younger people to come in and do this as well. It's a great way to open that door. Because if it's, oh, we don't do that, odds are they're not coming back. I mentioned sort of welcoming and inclusive talk. I often say that there should be someone from your group, and hopefully you already do this. I know many groups already do. When you're having an in-person meeting, that's sort of your welcome wagon. It's the person at the front door to whatever or at the parking lot who greets people. So it's great. They can say, hey, Joanne, it's good to see you again. But it's also for the new people like, hey, my name is Kevin. I'm so glad you're here. And they can be, let me walk you in and show you around. Like, oh, we've got this informational table with resources about our group and what we've got going on. And let me introduce you to someone, who can talk to you and tell you what's going to be happening tonight. Those introductions are super important to make people feel welcome in your group. And I often say there's that one cranky, angry person in every group. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. Oftentimes there are reasons why they're cranky and angry, because they've fought forever and they're tired and they understand what we've had to do to sort of move the movement forward, and they've earned all of that. That's oftentimes not the best person to be your welcome person. So it's often thinking about that. But I actually, many of you probably know Emily from AHA, and I proudly stole this from her. She knows I use this. But these are some of the things we've heard people say. So as new people come in, like, oh, how old are you? And that can be a little off-putting, and also sort of demonstrate oftentimes an age difference between maybe you and the rest and a new person. So it's often, what did you think of the events? So giving them, one, you find out about what they're interested in, you find out about other things to talk to them about, you find out what their sort of interests are. Are you new here? So again, sort of acknowledging that's a great, I don't think we've met, my name is. And one, you're introducing yourself, you're giving that information first, you're sort of setting the stage of about opening trust and opening a relationship and dialogue, and they get to choose what they share with you as well. Do you have kids? So again, sort of often going to be seen a little prying, but hey, what brought you here today? And again, sort of opening that door to find out like, hey, I'm interested in da-da-da, or I have some non-religious friends and I think I might be non-religious, and I've had questions about humanism. Great, let me introduce you to so-and-so. So again, helping you to find what they're interested in and how you can direct them to other people in the group to find connection for them. Are you in school? Oftentimes our students will say they feel uncomfortable with that. Sometimes the people have just left school and they're like, I keep getting asked that. No, I'm not. I graduated. That's why I'm here. And so it's easy to say, so tell me about yourself. We need more young people. So we've often had students who have felt that at AHA conferences. We've had students who have like, everyone keeps telling me we need more young people. It actually can be off-putting. So it's great to meet you. And again, my name is. So much more opener. Have you met our other young person? I've heard that in going in. And again, it's a little bit identifies that age difference. We want people to feel included. We want them to not separated. So let me introduce my friend. And again, showing that there's a relationship, introducing them to someone that may have things that are like them or that they can connect with is always great stuff to do. So if you say those things, I'm not picking on you. I'm sure I have said many of those things in other situations, but if our language, we can help just make that much more inviting to people as they're coming into new groups. Social media, super important, obviously, with this group. I often talk when I'm talking with local groups, Meetup is clearly a favorite of local secular groups. And I will say it is not one that young people are on. Southern California brings all of their groups together, and they invite the SSA chapters in, and they had a weekend retreat, a leadership retreat in Southern California, And I would say our students, when they brought up Meetup and talking about social media, one of our students raised their hand and said, I have no idea what that is. So just for younger people, I'm not saying get rid of it. If it's a platform that works for you and that you're connected with, great, keep it. But for younger people, it's not the best platform. And we recommend platforms that are active. Meetup's really not; it's really stagnant, and that show what your group is doing. That highlight and where you can see pictures and you can see activity and you can see what's going on. Because that's how they're going to judge you before they ever come into a meeting and decide whether this is something they're interested with. So Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So I will say Facebook, this is going to be for people with young children, with families who are a little bit more established. But again, you can have those discussions. You can do videos. You can have events and polls and those sorts of things. That's easy to interact with, easy to share. And a lot of like ourselves and other national groups, really easy for you to share that information and about what we're doing. And so it's you don't have to create that all. Some of it's a bit already created for you, and you can share that as well as sharing what's going on in your local groups. What we always talk about is the 70-30 rule. So about 70% is things that are interesting to you, news articles, videos, that sort of stuff. And 30% about like, here's our next event coming up. Here's a program we're doing. But again, you can be super action related, and it's really easy for a small amount of money. You can go and target people who are like that Facebook page, and other people will see that and new potential members. Instagram these three are where young people are right now, and it's all about images and photos. So you can, it's having a theme, and again, showing people that you have happy people doing stuff is really what you want to be showing. And if you've looked a little bit at what Foundation Beyond Belief right now is doing for their Secular Week of Action, great action shots about people doing stuff. I'd be copying those and showing those all over the place. And through Instagram, you can actually use Facebook to advertise, again, like $5-10 right into Instagram and again, say, send this to people who are like me, send this to people at this particular age group. So it's easy ways to sort of spread that word very quickly, a good investment of your money. And I would say all the national organizations spend money in social media promotion. Twitter, of course, we all know it's a great place to fight and to express your entire opinion in 183 characters or whatever it is. But again, the best thing I do is retweet stuff from national organizations. It's probably very difficult to tweet too much. The average tweet lasts about 5 minutes. And you can often collect with similar groups and those sorts of things, but a great way just to keep things out there. We are getting more into TikTok, which is, I will admit, a cumbersome platform to sort of get involved in unless you have someone dedicated to that. So if you had, these are obviously the three main categories of getting involved in. What we really want to do is we want to form relationships, and for local groups and young people especially. We often talk about who from your group is the sort of the most appropriate to start doing that and make those connections. So how is your group going to outreach is a great conversation to have. Who's going to be doing it, and how will you make new people feel welcome into your group? So I am happy to answer any questions. If you have specific things you want information about, happy to do that. If you want to have general conversations, general questions, again, very happy to answer those questions. Let me go ahead and stop sharing and we can get this.
And if people want to type their questions into the chat, that would facilitate things. There were two questions from Bonnie. One was, do you have international students chapters? And also, do students have to pay a fee to join SSA? Two questions.
Great questions. Yeah, great questions. So all of our student memberships are free. So we have always had our system is really set up to have students in chapters in schools or on campuses. We've always had students who were homeschooled or not on a campus that had a chapter. And so we've always had individual students who have been involved in SSA. And I will say since COVID, that has increased dramatically. So we'll probably see the trend for more students going back into that sort of chapter or campus group paradigm. But we are making sure that we are always continuing to have programs and services so that any student, no matter where they are, can participate and feel connected to that larger community. So we have monthly student leadership meetings where any student, SSA member or not, can come and participate to keep them active and involved. So we do have international students. And so we actually have students from all over. We actually have one of our board members and one of our students on our board is from Canada, but we often get inquiries and have student members from the Middle East, Pakistan, Africa, South America, Mexico. So obviously we can't mail them things. And one of the things that we tell them, you're happy, you can be active in all of our virtual programming. And so we do have that. My guess is that we will start to see semblance of SSAs in other areas that are self-supporting and those sorts of things.
I'm curious myself as to what is the attrition rate of SSA chapters, since you seem to have, I've seen it here in Chicago with a couple groups. You get a chapter that's really strong. It's strong with a cadre of people who graduate, and then the chapters kind of go quiescent.
Yes.
How is that addressed, and what's SSA doing for that around the nation, and how often does it happen?
With COVID, we actually had a pretty good, about 84% of our chapters remain active during COVID in some semblance. And so we clearly saw more activity as COVID first. I think all of us, we won't be at work for 2 weeks. And then we're like, okay, 2 months. And they're like, oh, wow, that was 2 years. So about 84% of our chapters remain active in some semblance during COVID. And in some chapters that really whittled down to like just this core and the officers and those sorts of things. We expected a big sort of in-person boom this past academic year. We expected that in the fall, and then Omicron came around, or sorry, Delta came around and really made that so that didn't happen. We had several of the groups try to go back to in-person. And I think, as Scott mentioned, there is that big fatigue, which is, we call it post-COVID fatigue, which is a very real thing. And so that proved a little bit more difficult. This spring has really been a big return to campus, a big return to programs, and so a little bit more of that traditional, normal, quote unquote sense. But we really think that the big boost coming back will be this upcoming fall. So after the summer, this fall, and that's what we are really preparing for. And we just did in sort of preparation for that this spring, we did a huge outreach. So we requested and collected information from the largest 5 public colleges and universities in every state. And what we did was we directly reached out to 1.4 million students. So basically we hit like an entire school. So the University of Chicago, the University of Florida, the University of Virginia, Georgia Southern, my alma mater. But direct outreach to 1.4, basically emailing every single student on campus. In some instances, we didn't have email addresses, so we sent them texts. In some instances, we didn't have either, and so we mailed postcards to their home during spring break. So just really, and the primary reason to sort of increase the awareness of non-religion and the growth in young people, it's almost 50% now, and obviously to reach our people and to promote SSA, our scholarships, our conference, and of course wanting to start a chapter and those sorts of things. So we also, of course, hit a lot of religious students in that outreach. We tried to make our email as messaging as pleasant as possible. We didn't want people marking us as spam. And I'll say we got some very good, like, I'm religious, but I support you guys, and I have lots of non-religious friends. And as you can imagine, we got a lot of very colorful responses back from some very devout religious people as well, which we knew and expected, and which is fine. So yeah.
Okay, anybody else have any questions?
I have a question
I did see
about
one from Russell, just talking about the reason why religious students are participating in SSA.
I missed that one. Sorry, Russell.
No, it's okay. It's interesting. So we often have religious students who are involved, and I would say most of the times are welcomed by our chapters and coming in. So for individual students, we oftentimes they want to have philosophical conversations about religion. And sometimes that means questioning, like, the religious doctrine. And so they've quickly realized that religious communities aren't safe places to have those conversations. So majority of our students tend to be very knowledgeable about religion and different religions. And of course, they're going to love to have a conversation about it. So those students are, most chances welcomed in, are part of the organization, and take part in all those conversations. And our students welcome the debate and the difference of opinion. And our chapters also are doing more and more interfaith work on campuses. Our chapter at Clarion University has a great relationship with Campus Crusade for Christ. And so they do monthly movies together. So we're 1 month, Campus Crusade for Christ picks the movie, often a religious movie, and they have a conversation about the movie afterwards. The next month, our students pick the movie, and they have a conversation about it, and they've got a great relationship. So we're continuing to see that happen. At the Southeastern Missouri State University, our chapter hosts and puts on the interfaith panel on campus. It started because they wanted to make sure they were represented, but now they're inviting the religious organizations to come and have this conversation. And of course, since they're hosting it, non-religion is obviously up front and proudly displayed in that conversation.
Okay, anybody else?
So I have a curiosity about, I remember when I was in college and exploring different philosophical options. That's essentially where I became an atheist, having been raised a Southern Baptist. My question is, I know that there's an organization called Recovering from Religion. Mm-hmm. What do you do within your groups for your young people that may be struggling with family-related issues or friendship-related issues as they decide to leave religion behind? For we older folks, that may not be as much of an issue, but I think it probably is for younger people.
I would say we have a great relationship with Recovering from Religion. And so they are a resource for anyone, but also obviously for young people as well. So we try to make sure that our chapters are aware of that resource. So, and if we receive inquiries and people are having trouble, we do connect them with Recovering from Religion. So it's a fantastic service that the secular community has to be able to offer that. And the training that they do and the volunteers are great. So for us, so yeah, I think one, we offer that. The other thing is, I think we're often when people are leaving religion, it is your friends and your community and your family that often the times there are trouble with. And we had one student in the Midwest who we have Ask an Atheist Day we do twice a year. Most of our chapters will have booths on campus where you come and ask us anything. We're atheists. Obviously, you get philosophical and religious questions. You also get weird and stupid stuff, which our students love. But we had one student who posted on his social media just one thing about being an atheist. He received a call that day from his parents saying, he needed to remove that, and this is just ridiculous, and he needed to stop this nonsense. And he said, "This is what I believe." And so, I don't believe in God. I am an atheist. And his parents immediately cut off all funding. So that semester of school was already paid for. But they tried to take his car, which he was like, "I paid for that. You can't take my car." They were stopped paying for his apartment. So he was getting, obviously some help from his family. So he's like, I'm getting a second job because I now know what my family thinks. And so I'm making sure that I can do this for myself. And so I'm definitely finishing college. So unfortunately, we continue to see situations like that. But I think one of the common things we hear from why people get involved with an SSA, why they stay involved, what's the best thing they got out of it, and when they leave, what was the best thing about being in it, is community. And so when you leave your religious community, you need a place to go to. So having those people who think like you, who believe like you, or who are doing stuff that you're interested in, and where you can have those conversations. And sometimes it's the philosophical question, conversations to figure out where you are and what you do or don't believe. So that's a good thing as well. And I said that's probably one of the most valuable resources that our chapters on campus offer. And we still hear people, even on huge campuses, say, "I thought I was the only one," even when it's clear that's just so not the case anymore. So we still hear that all the time.
So how often does that happen when a family cut off their kids because they find out their kids become atheists?
Hopefully, and fortunately, I think it's less and less and less. We are careful about the things that we send out to students. So we have a thing where you can say, it's okay to mail me. It's okay to mail, but don't put anything SSA on it. Don't mail me at home, that sort of stuff. And I had a call from a parent yesterday, which was like, "You sent something to my son." And I was like, "Okay." And he said, "Well, he's religious." And I was like, they're like, "Where did you get the address?" And I was like, "Well, on our website or something, your student would have had to give us that. That's the only way we would get it." So, and I looked it up, and the student had applied. Had inquired about a scholarship with us, and so we, had sent some scholarship information, about stuff coming up, and that, parents was like, "Well, you need to take him off." And I was like, I said, "Well, your student is the one that signed up. So if your student wants to let me know that they don't want to be a part of it, I'm happy to do that." So, and then I had the dad call me. So I'm like, so we try to be as respectful. And I think one of the things that we often face is students, because they come from religious families, don't want to be openly visible publicly. And so when we're trying to tell stories, that's one of the things that we often face, because we want to be super respectful about their privacy, and understanding that we don't know what their family situation is and how supported they may or may not be.
Thank you.
Yeah, don't ask, don't tell. So one of the ways, and Howard sort of said, how can we sort of help? One of the things that we look is we obviously provide free membership, free tabling supplies, free resources to students. And so obviously donors are extremely important to us. It's about 98% of our money comes from individual donors. And so that's super important. We do have a membership campaign going on right now. So where we do have lots of non-student members, and through your membership, you pay for and allow us to have free membership for students. So that's a great way to support them. So just as a point, since we brought up membership and those sorts of things.
So
Anybody else? Oh,
not
sorry.
yet.
Go ahead, Scott.
The new executive director of the AHA mentioned to us a couple months ago or a month ago about last month about exploring opportunities to partner with the Secular Student Alliance, maybe becoming a kind of a sponsor group for a local SSA chapter, having joint events. I know that, young people don't tend to like having older folks around. I've seen all kinds of studies that young people mostly are influenced by their peers. They're not really looking for, in general for older adult kind of guidance, but there may be opportunities to have joint activities. What are your thoughts about that? Have you heard other folks in the AHA talking about those? What are your thoughts and plans?
We encourage sort of joint programs, and I think what we often see is several of our student groups will get emails from a local group that's in the area and go, "Hey, we're doing this, please come." Or they're like, hey, they start asking them a bunch of questions like, hey, we want younger people and we don't have a lot. And what can you tell us about this? And how can we get more younger people? And I can probably guarantee you that none of those emails get answered. So what we always talk is it's about forming a relationship, just, for human, just humans in general. So what we often will say is, ask if you can, when you see that they have meetings, like, look them up, see what what their events are, and have a couple of people go to one of their events. And at the beginning of it or end of it, introduce yourself. Like, hey, I'm Scott and I'm from, and I just want to say it was great to be here. Love this. Just know we're a local group in the area. If you ever need anything, we're here. You have done miles to open the door by doing that. So we oftentimes people in local groups will call us and say, hey, we have got this school down the road. What can we do to help get a chapter started? And we're like, we'll send you flyers. Like, if you can go and hang them up all over campus, like, it'll take you an hour to do. And we'll have our contact information on there so they can contact us. So we go, we need one student oftentimes on a campus. And usually within 2 weeks, our campus organizing staff can get a chapter up and running. So oftentimes there's things they have to do on their campus that takes a little bit longer become a recognized student organization, which we require them to do. But identifying that student and getting them up and running, and sending them, like, here's tabling supplies and here's a banner and all this sort of stuff. We can usually do that within 2 weeks. That's another great thing to do. And I think if you do, and after you have that relationship established, and that's by going to them. You've got to spend a lot of time putting energy in before you're going to see sort of the return on that. So we often say it's making an investment. And then it's really, you're going to learn more about what they're interested in, learn more about the programs that they like, hear what they're talking about. And that probably gives you some really good insight into your first event or program you want to do with them, and sort of making that more successful. So it takes time, I will say. And oftentimes it's, it's putting the emphasis on them and what they like, rather than sort of first off inviting them or asking them a bunch of questions about your group, because we've often find that the latter is not successful.
I had a question from the perspective of the college or university. Typically, they require some kind of a professor or some to sponsor the program. Is this an area that we could become more involved in, since we're more in that same academic realm?
If you are faculty or staff at a college or university, or know someone who is, or a member of your group is, or in a high school or a middle school, yes, almost every school or college or university requires that they have an advisor on campus. And we really find the success of groups, that helps a lot. We provide information to advisors as well. So if you can help, if you can be that person, or if you can help identify people, that's another great way to help start a chapter or strengthen a chapter on a particular campus. So, and I would just say, Howard mentioned, when I first started, we sort of looked through a lot of the data on where sort of chapters were ending. So year one was super important. So the first year that a chapter started, getting up and active, making sure that they went from that end of the school year to the new one. So we do a lot of work with them on, how are you going to make it over the summer? What are you going to do to keep people connected? How are you going to get back in the fall? So asking those questions, so they have to think about those. And if we can get them past year one, the odds are likely that they'll be there until year 3. And as Howard sort of mentioned, that's when the big transition. So the people the leaders who started the group are graduating. And so we, every year are talking about who are your new leaders? How are you transitioning? We developed rituals. So we have a new member ritual. We have a new leader ritual. We have a graduation ritual. So one, we're getting all their information all the time about who the new people are. And also going to be asking them questions and making them sort of think, like, you've done all this work. You've got this good thing going. Don't you want to make sure you put in the work to make sure it keeps going? So we found if we can do that, the likelihood that that the data shows us the likelihood that they'll be there until year 10. So so we know that there's 2 crucial years to really put that emphasis on. Not that we're not only doing it then, but those are the 2 big time periods of really to do that to help the groups last and be successful and continue on the campus. Any other questions for me?
Yeah, I'd like to thank Kevin. I'm sorry,
I
was there
got, I
another
got one
question?
quick one I'd like to ask.
It's 8:45.
I saw the percentages you gave for those who are saying they're non-religious. How many of those are actually non-theist? Because there's a lot who says they're non-religious, but they still believe in some kind of supernaturalism. Maybe it's not the Christian version or whatever.
Yeah. So yeah, in the nuns, there's the larger category. So you have I'm spiritual but not religious. Unfortunately, there's been sort of a big sort of interest in horoscopes and those sorts of things, which I think will quickly fade out when they realize, there's even less than that on religious stories. But they're off, I think, for you like atheist, agnostic, sort of that realm, sort of more your non-theistic people. It's usually about in between 25 and 29% are going to fall in that realm. That's a little bit older data, not by too many years, but my guess is we're gonna see that continue to be a larger chunk, probably not a huge chunk, but a larger chunk of that nuns will, the non-religious will become a little bit larger non-theist as well. But it'll never be the majority, I don't think, but it'll be more and more in that direction.
Hey, anything else from anybody? Okay, Kevin, I want to thank you very much for joining us tonight. It was very informative. I think we will have some discussions within our chapter as to what we can do to facilitate SSA actions here in our part of the suburbs. And hopefully we can count on SSA to give us some guidance along the way should we run into a roadblock or have questions or whatever might come up. So very much appreciate you being here and being there for us in the future.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and enjoy sort of e-meeting everyone. We're definitely a resource, so if we can ever help, please reach out to me. And then I'm also working directly with Nadia at AHA, and we're talking about sort of some structural and programmatic changes within AHA. So not leaving stuff, but adding more. So on how to make AHA as a whole more inviting for new and younger people, and also things that we can do for the local groups to make that easier as well. So we've got a little building to do, but we should start to see some of that here shortly.
Why do you think I asked you to talk to us tonight?
No, I'm glad. It's wonderful. Yeah, Nadia's been a great partner so far.
So, okay.
Well, y'all have a good rest of the meeting, and again, thank you very much.
Okay, you taking off then, or are you gonna stick around for a moment?
I'm gonna go and eat some dinner.
Oh, dinner! Come on now. Okay, thanks a lot. Appreciate it, Kevin. You have a good evening.
You too. Bye.
Okay. Scott, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah, if everybody else can stay for a few minutes, we've got a couple of points of business to take care of here on our last meeting of the calendar or of the program year. The first order of business is Stephanie with us this evening. Stephanie, are you online?
Unmute yourself. Okay.
Gallery view.
Okay, there you go.
Yep, online and on the air.
Hi.
But hi, you got to sit down though. There you
Yeah.
go.
So some of
Okay.
you may have heard the news that Stephanie and her husband Duncan are planning to move to Pennsylvania at some point, perhaps as early as this summer. And Stephanie has been a very long serving board member for the Prairie State Humanists. Previously, we were known as the Humanists of West Suburban Chicagoland. And we just want to thank Stephanie for sticking with us for all this time. Stephanie, do you know how long you've been associated with the group? Were you one of the original founding members, or?
Yes, I was. Jack Seacrest is the other really longtime member. Mike Warner has moved east.
Okay. So in recognition of your many years of service and the assistance that you provided to the chapter in more ways than I can begin to enumerate, we would like to thank you. Howard, did you have a couple words to share as well?
Yeah, hang on one second here. Stephanie, we have this for you. Presented to Stephanie Down Hughes in appreciation of her continuous work and dedication to our chapter and the humanist movement, awarded May 2022 by the Prairie State Humanists. I have the plaque here, Stephanie, and I will get together with you, figure out a way of delivering it to you. But we just wanted to share with everyone the what we are presenting to Stephanie this evening.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a great adventure for me to work with this group, and I have not been as active lately as I have been at times in the past, and I'm appreciative of the growing participation of lots of different kinds of people. And now that we've become more familiar with doing things remotely, I'll be able to tune in with the group even after we've moved back to Pittsburgh. And so keep up the good work.
Great. We look forward to continuing to see you and Duncan, even if you are only able to join remotely. But if you'd like to come back, you can always crash at my house and
Right.
for a visit.
We will have guest accommodations in our community where we're going to. So there's lots to see and do in that part of the world, and I hope people will let us know in advance when you're planning a trip and come stay at our inn. We have enjoyed having lots of different kinds of visitors over the years, including international visitors.
Right. All right. And then also, I mentioned earlier that I was taking a break from presenting programs over the summer. I intend to stay on as a board member, and then the board elects its officers. I'm currently the president. We also have another board member who's going to take a break from formal activities, and that is Russell. Russell Keating is going to step down from his board position, at least for now. So Russell, we also thank you for your recent service, and assume that you will continue to participate in events, and we will continue to see you around.
Absolutely. Thanks for saying that, Scott. It's been fun serving on the board and working with all you folks.
All right, so that means that we have two board openings, and we have found two candidates to possibly fill those openings. One of them is Joanne Reed, and she is with us via Zoom this evening. Many of you will be familiar with Joanne. She's been instrumental in providing some of the science programs that we've had both in person and online. And she's a good personal friend of mine, her and her wife, Phyllis. And Joanne is a very passionate humanist and will be, I think, a good addition to our board. So Joanne, you want to?
In the ass?
Yeah, a good pain in the ass. I appreciate that. Yes, in a good way, of course.
Of course.
Yeah. So many of you know Joanne, and Joanne would like to fill the position on our board. And then the other is Carolyn Lewis, who has been a board member in the past. She was not able to join us via Zoom this evening, but she has been absolutely
I
just.
pressed the mute thing.
Whoop.
Hello,
Oh, Bob.
Oh, hey,
I'm
Carolyn. Good.
Bob is actually Carolyn.
Oh, good.
hi, Carolyn. So, Carolyn, what did make it here tonight? Okay.
Yeah, a little late, but I'm here. And I'm
Good.
flattered to be nominated to be on the board.
Great.
Why
So-
does it say Bob?
Because that's her husband's name.
Yeah, but it's her. Yeah. Hi, Carolyn.
Computers. You
Hi,
know how
Joanne.
computers are. So other than that, our returning board members will right now are thought to be, or are proposed. We propose that it'll be Jack Seacrest, who is our founding, or one of our co-founders, and Howard Katz, who has helped facilitate tonight's meeting. I certainly will stick around. We also expect Deb Briggs to stay. Bonnie Chen, she is online with us this evening. She's been our treasurer and has been instrumental, just absolutely fantastic about helping us get some of our programs as we've gone through these past couple of years. So Bonnie's going to stay with us. Also, we have Paul Selnow, who possibly could not join tonight. He often has an unpredictable work schedule. And I think that's everybody. Let's see, Howard, Bonnie, did I leave anybody out?
No.
Okay, so myself, Howard, Bonnie, Joanne, Carolyn, Jack, Deb, and Paul. 8 board members. What we typically do is we ask for a consensus. We haven't typically needed paper ballots, but those of you who are on the call this evening, here's what I'm going to do. Is there anybody who has concerns or would like to vote no for any candidate? You may feel free to send me a private message via the chat, and we'll take that into account. Okay, messages are really flooding in here. Wow, I had no idea. Really? Okay, well,
Why what they said about me.
yeah, some breaking news about Deb. Apparently, no, actually, nobody has dissented. So
I moved the board by acclamation.
yes, so by acclamation, without any dissent, we will proceed with the board as specified just previously. So we have our new board for this coming year for the Prairie State Humanists, and we look forward to many more great programs starting in September. Hopefully we can begin meeting in person in September. Again, depending upon the state of the pandemic, but as I said earlier, we will also maintain a online presence. But the new board will get to work on planning activities for next year, and keep an eye on Meetup and on
Even
your
if it is
email.
old fogey.
Yeah, right. For we old fogies. And then also on your email, if we have any spontaneous events and or our regular dinner and luncheon events, we will keep you informed about those. So thank you all. It's been a great season. I look forward to seeing you all throughout some of our events this summer and certainly in the fall.
I'm going to nominate my cat as the ambassador of the humanist.
Oh, great. To the feline kingdom.
Yes. I call him FDR because he's a cripple.
Oh, Bonnie.
Too soon. Too soon.
Too soon,
Oh.
too soon. Yeah, his back toes are cut off.
Oh.
Yeah, so he only has front toes. So, but he's very sweet.
Oh, good. So you don't need all of your toes to be sweet.
Yeah.
Paul was caught in a muskrat trap, so it was always deformed. But he was a cuddler, and cat.
All
Yeah.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Stephanie, where are you going in Pennsylvania? What are you doing? I didn't know that you were leaving us.
We're going back to the South Hills of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where we lived for 9 years before we came here. It's
Cool.
where we became active humanists as part of a Unitarian Universalist congregation. So we're moving back to not only family, but friends, and also looking forward to making some new friends.
All right. You guys have a grand time. I miss
thank
you.
Thank you. We have been researching and planning this for a long time, Duncan and I have, but the opportunity to move back to the particular situation that we wanted to came up suddenly, and we decided to grab it because it was just the perfect situation for us. So
Good.
that's part of why we haven't been telling everybody, because we've been so busy trying to skinny down from a 6-bedroom home to the 2 condo bedrooms we'll have, but we haven't had much chance to play.
I'm sure Pittsburgh in the wintertime is just lovely.
It's a little milder. Pittsburgh is just a little milder than here. It's similar to here. I'm sure that we'll be spending part of our time traveling still.
All right. And also in the news category, the DuPage Unitarian Universalist Church has a new minister, Mandy. I apologize, I can't remember her last name off the top of my head, but for the first time in the probably 30, 40-year history of the church, this new minister has been elected unanimously. And the church congregation has many humanists, perhaps as many as 50% or more of the congregation are humanists. The new minister seems to be very sympathetic and philosophically positively disposed to the principles of humanism, which are also the principles espoused by the Unitarian Universalist denomination. So I encourage those of you who are near Naperville to check out the church. It's a sort of a sister organization with our chapter, and the facility there of the physical church is where we will be occasionally meeting. So that's all I have. Anybody have any closing thoughts, announcements?
Just want to remind everyone of the June AHA conference will be a free sign up. So go over to the AmericanHumanist.org and sign up. You can see the speaker list and what they're going to be doing. It's totally online this year. We're hoping to get back to a physical meeting also next year.
Have a great
right.
trip, Scott.
Thank you. Yep. I will say hi to the whales for everybody.
Can you bring back a piece of iceberg for us for a souvenir?
I'll put one in my baggage.
I
Yep.
appreciate that.
Yep. All right. Take care, everyone. Good night, and we will talk again
see you all.
throughout the summer. Bye.
Okay, and I'm going to end the meeting here, so everybody get ready to